I never imagined a single plate of food would change everything. But standing in that cold marble kitchen clutching my grandmother's recipe like a lifeline, I had no idea I was about to feed the city's most dangerous alpha twins, Cade and Knox Ashford, mafia bosses who'd fired 50 chefs in 3 months. My hands trembled as I set the dish before them, not from fear exactly, but because this was my final chance to cover my grandmother's crushing medical bills. "Who the hell are you?" Cade's voice sliced through the silence sharp as a blade. His steel-gray eyes locked onto me with predatory focus. "I'm just a beta, nothing remarkable, certainly nothing an alpha like him would typically notice." But Knox, his twin, quieter yet somehow more intense, leaned forward and inhaled deeply, his expression shifting to something I couldn't quite read. "He smells different," Knox murmured, and my stomach dropped. "That's impossible. I don't have a scent. Betas don't emit pheromones." "I'm Leo," I managed, my voice barely steady despite my best efforts. "I'm here to cook for you." Cade's jaw tightened, and for one terrifying moment I thought he'd dismiss me like all the others. Another failure added to the growing list. But then Knox picked up his fork with deliberate slowness, took a single bite and closed his eyes. The entire room fell into absolute silence, as if the world itself held its breath. When he opened his eyes again, he stared at me like I'd answered some question he'd been asking his entire life. "Make us another dish," he said quietly, his tone leaving no room for argument. Cade didn't object or challenge his brother's request. He simply continued watching me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Hunger mixed with confusion, wrapped around something darker and far more complicated. I spent the entire night cooking. Every dish I prepared, they consumed in complete silence, their gazes never wavering from my movements around the kitchen. Each time I placed a new plate before them, Knox's eyes would soften with that same peaceful expression, while Cade gradually relaxed in ways that seemed foreign to his rigid posture. This was the first time I truly felt my cooking might be something special, at least to these two formidable men. By dawn, exhaustion weighed heavy on my shoulders, my hands aching from hours of constant work, but they appeared completely transformed, satisfied, peaceful, as though they'd discovered something they'd been searching for desperately without even knowing what it was. "You're hired," Cade finally announced, standing close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his powerful frame. "Live here, cook for us daily, we'll provide whatever you require." I should have refused. I should have walked away from whatever this strange situation was becoming. But the money they offered, $10,000 monthly, could save my grandmother 10 times over. Her surgery could happen. She could actually recover and live. "One condition," Knox added suddenly, his hand settling on my wrist, thumb pressing gently against my pulse point. His touch sent an unexpected current through my system that I couldn't explain. "You cook exclusively for us. Nobody else, ever." The way he stated this didn't sound like a simple employment term. It felt like a promise, a claim I didn't fully understand yet couldn't ignore. When I met his dark eyes, realization struck. I'd stepped into something far more dangerous than a cooking position. Because the way both of them were looking at me, Cade with his intense calculating assessment, Knox with his quiet but desperate need, this wasn't how alphas typically regarded betas. This was how they looked at property they intended to keep. Or worse, how they viewed something they planned to possess forever, regardless of consequences. I said yes anyway. In that moment, I had no comprehension that I'd just made the biggest decision of my entire life. One that would unravel everything I thought I knew about myself and reshape my future in ways I couldn't begin to imagine. The Ashford mansion loomed behind them through the windows, massive and imposing, and I wondered what exactly I was walking into when I agreed to live within its walls. Knox's grip on my wrist remained firm but not painful, almost protective in nature. Cade circled me slowly, studying me from different angles like I was some puzzle he needed to solve immediately. "Your room is on the 3rd floor, he said, his tone suggesting this wasn't up for discussion. "Marcus will show you up and help you get settled. Tomorrow morning we expect breakfast at 7 sharp. Of course, I agreed, though my mind was spinning with questions I didn't dare voice. What made my cooking so different? Why did they react to me this way when I was supposedly just an ordinary beta? And why did standing between these two powerful alphas make my heart race in ways that had nothing to do with fear? As Marcus, a stern-faced man built like a mountain, led me through the mansion's winding corridors, I caught glimpses of the brothers through doorways. They stood together in what appeared to be a study, speaking in low voices I couldn't hear, but both kept glancing in the direction I'd gone. Their attention felt like a physical weight even from a distance, pressing against my skin and making me hyper-aware of my every movement. My new room was larger than my entire previous apartment, decorated in deep blues and soft grays, with an attached bathroom that featured both a shower and an enormous soaking tub. Fresh clothes had already been laid out on the bed, perfectly sized for me, though I'd never provided measurements. How did they know? "Mr. Ashford wants you comfortable," Marcus explained gruffly, noticing my confused expression. "He's very particular about those under his protection." Protection. The word felt heavier than it should, loaded with implications I wasn't ready to examine. I thanked Marcus and closed the door, finally alone for the first time since entering this strange new world. Sinking onto the bed, I let myself process everything that had happened in the span of a few hours. I'd gone from desperately poor and worried about my grandmother's survival to employed by dangerous mafia bosses who looked at me like I was simultaneously their salvation and their next obsession. Sleep didn't come easily that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Knox's intense stare, felt Cade's presence like electricity against my skin. Something fundamental had shifted tonight, though I couldn't name exactly what. All I knew was that my simple life as an unnoticed beta had ended the moment I'd stepped into that kitchen. Whatever came next, there would be no going back to who I was before. The Ashford twins had already claimed something from me, even if I didn't yet understand what or how willingly I'd given it. 3 days living in the Ashford mansion had passed, and each one grew stranger than the last. The first day, I dismissed it as coincidence when Cade and Knox lingered near the kitchen while I worked. The second day, I'd noticed how they always seemed to be nearby, inventing excuses to pass my bedroom door or appear wherever I happened to be. Today, the third morning, I woke to find them literally standing outside my room as if they'd maintained vigil throughout the entire night. "Good morning, Leo." Knox greeted me when I opened the door, his voice gentle despite the intensity burning in his eyes. That same look that never quite faded, no matter the situation. "Were you out here all night?" I asked, confusion coloring my words. Cade answered with characteristic directness, offering no pretense or excuse. "We were ensuring your safety. This mansion sees considerable traffic, staff members, security personnel, business associates. We simply wanted to protect me." I finished his sentence, irritation creeping into my tone despite my attempt to stay professional. "I'm just your cook. This level of security seems excessive." "You're far more than just a cook," Knox said softly, his eyes focusing on my face as though reading some crucial information written there that only he could see. But then he caught himself, pulling back slightly. "What I mean is, you're cooking. It's become quite important to us." I was about to respond when a strange sensation washed over me. A subtle warmth began at the base of my neck, spreading gradually through my entire body like liquid heat beneath my skin. At first I thought perhaps I was getting sick, running a fever, but this felt fundamentally different. This felt like something awakening inside me that had been dormant my whole life. "I'll start breakfast," I said quickly, needing to escape their overwhelming scrutiny, and hurried downstairs. In the kitchen, while preparing ingredients, the warmth intensified. My head felt light, almost dizzy, and my skin developed a strange tingling sensation I'd never experienced before. I gripped the counter to maintain my balance, but my legs weakened as though something was draining all the strength from my body. "Leo?" Knox's voice came from directly behind me. I hadn't heard him enter. Then his hands settled on my shoulders, steadying me, and the instant he made contact, that warmth transformed into something else entirely. A desperate, aching need flooded through me, a feeling I'd never encountered in my life. My entire body yearning to lean into his presence, craving his closeness and warmth with an intensity that terrified me. "What's—" Knox's grip tightened fractionally. "Leo, your scent is changing." His voice sounded strained, as though he was fighting some internal battle. "My scent? Knox, I'm a beta. I don't have lum, dear. You're entering preheat." He cut me off, his breath now hot and heavy against my neck. "And that's impossible if you're actually beta." "Preheat? No, that couldn't be right. Only omegas experienced heat cycles. I was beta. Every medical report throughout my entire life confirmed it. But then what was this feeling? This desperate consuming need taking over my rational thoughts? That's when Cade entered the kitchen, and the second he registered the scene, Knox's hands on me, my body leaning into his brother. The charged atmosphere between us, his entire expression transformed. His eyes darkened to almost black, His jaw clenched hard enough I could see the muscle jumping, and a low, possessive growl rumbled from deep in his chest. "Nox, step away, now." But Nox held me tighter instead of releasing me. "Cade, his scent, can't you smell it? He's Omega, his heat is beginning." "That's impossible," Cade said, though he was already moving closer, his eyes locked on me with laser focus. "His medical records clearly state, the records are wrong," Nox stated firmly. "I can smell his scent clearly now, sweet, intoxicating. Cade, you can smell it too, stop denying what's obvious." Cade approached until he stood close enough that I could feel his body heat. His alpha scent, dark cedar mixed with something smoky and rich, enveloping me completely. He closed his eyes and took a deep, deliberate breath. When he opened them again, the hunger I saw there filled me with both fear and another emotion I couldn't name. "Fuck," he whispered roughly. "You're right, Leo, your scent is—" "I don't understand," I said, panic and confusion warring inside me. "I've been beta my entire life. I've never had a scent, never experienced heat, never late-blooming Omega," Nox said gently, one hand moving to touch my hair with a tenderness that suggested he could barely restrain himself. "It's extremely rare. Perhaps your body suppressed your true nature. Malnutrition, chronic stress, trauma, any of these could cause it. But now that you're receiving proper care, adequate nutrition, your real nature is emerging." Cade completed the thought. Then he gripped my chin, forcing me to meet his intense gaze. "And Leo, an unmated Omega's first heat is incredibly dangerous. You'll need an alpha. You'll need protection. We should mark him," Nox said suddenly, his voice raw with desperate need. "Right now, before his scent grows stronger. Before another alpha catches wind of it. Before—" "No," Cade said sharply, though his own voice carried that same desperation. "Not like this. Not when he's confused and doesn't fully understand what's happening." Nox reluctantly released me, but his eyes remained fixed on me, hungry and desperate for something I wasn't ready to give. Cade took a deep breath, visibly struggling to regain his usual iron control. "We're taking you to the hospital," he finally declared. "Proper testing, professional diagnosis, and then we'll decide what needs to happen next." But the way they both looked at me during that car ride, the way their hands kept making contact, Nox holding my hand, Cade's palm resting on my thigh, protective and possessive, told me the decision had already been made in their minds. I was no longer just their cook. I'd become something else, something they'd already claimed as theirs, whether I'd agreed or not. And the most frightening part, some deep part of me wanted them to claim me, wanted them to make me theirs completely. That feeling scared me far more than anything else happening, because it suggested I'd already started falling into whatever trap this was, without even realizing when I'd taken the first step. Sitting in the hospital's cold examination room felt surreal. Cade and Nox both remained with me, flatly refusing to leave when the doctor requested privacy. "We're staying," Cade had stated firmly, in a tone that accepted no argument. The doctor hadn't pushed back. Perhaps the Ashford name carried that much weight, or maybe the possessiveness radiating from both brothers was intimidating enough to end the discussion. Dr. Sarah Chen reviewed my files carefully, glancing between the documents and me several times before finally speaking. "Mr. Leo," she said, adjusting her glasses with professional precision, "your condition is exceptionally rare but not impossible. You are a late-blooming Omega." My heartbeat accelerated dramatically. "But all my medical reports from childhood onwards say I'm beta. How is that?" "In late-blooming Omegas, the body suppresses Omega nature," the doctor explained in a kind but clinical tone, "usually due to trauma, chronic stress, severe malnutrition, or emotional repression. In your case, I suspect all three factors contributed." She indicated my old medical files. "See here, severe malnourishment during childhood, long-term stress from your grandmother's illness, significant financial pressure. Your body entered survival mode and hid your Omega nature to protect you." Nox, seated beside me, tightened his grip on my hand slightly. I couldn't bring myself to look at him, feeling too overwhelmed by everything being revealed. "And now?" I asked quietly. "Now that you're receiving proper care, balanced nutrition, stable environment, reduced stress, your body finally feels safe enough," Dr. Chen explained. "That's why your true nature is emerging. Your first heat will likely occur within the next few days." "How dangerous is a first heat?" Cade asked, his businesslike tone barely masking the underlying tension I could hear clearly. The doctor's expression grew serious. "Very dangerous, especially for an unmated Omega. During heat, an Omega's scent becomes extremely potent, attracting aggressive alphas. Without proper alpha protection, Leo would be vulnerable to forced bonding, assault, or worse. I felt like all the air had been sucked from the room. So I need an alpha? My words came out barely above a whisper. Ideally, yes, the doctor confirmed. A trusted alpha who can help you through the heat safely and provide protection. If you choose to bond, that provides permanent protection going forward. I could feel both alphas' eyes on me, their tension filling the space until it felt thick enough to cut. And if I don't want to bond with anyone? I asked. The doctor smiled sympathetically. Then you'd need to remain in a safe, secure location, possibly under medical supervision. Heat suppressants can help to some degree, but they're usually ineffective for a first heat. And Leo, I'll be honest, an unmated omega experiencing their first heat alone is extremely painful and traumatic. The ride back to the mansion passed in complete silence. I stared out the window, lost in turbulent thoughts, while Cade drove and Knox continued holding my hand as though afraid I might vanish if he let go. When we arrived home, Cade called an emergency meeting in the living room. Just the three of us. We need to address this situation, Cade said, pacing restlessly. He seemed agitated in a way that was unusual for him. He typically maintained perfect control, calculated and composed. But right now he looked like he was barely keeping himself together. Knox guided me to the couch and knelt before me, taking both my hands in his. Leo, we don't want to force anything on you, ever, but your safety is our absolute priority. Your heat is coming, Cade continued, finally stopping his pacing to face me directly. If your scent reaches the wrong people, every unmated alpha in the city will know. Our enemies will know. Leo, do you comprehend how dangerous that makes you? You'd become a target. I understood far too clearly. So what do you want me to do? The brothers exchanged a long look, some silent communication passing between them that I couldn't interpret. Then Knox spoke softly, "Marry us." My heart skipped several beats. What? Marry us, Cade repeated, firm and crystal clear. Bond with us. We'll protect you, keep you safe from everything. You'll never want for anything, and your heat will help you through it. Both of you? I needed to hear it stated explicitly, even though the answer seemed obvious. We share everything, Knox said, his thumb tracing gentle circles on my knuckles. We always have. Business, this mansion, our lives. And now we want to share you. If you'll allow it. This is enormous, I whispered. You've known me less than a week. You're not just anything, Cade interrupted, lowering himself to my level so all three of us were eye to eye. Now he was close, so incredibly close. Leo, since you arrived, something fundamental has changed. Your cooking isn't merely food. Your presence brings us peace, makes us calm in ways we've never experienced. And your scent, Knox added. Since discovering your omega, we can't imagine you with anyone else. This possessiveness might be wrong, might be too fast, but it's our truth. We're in love with you, Cade stated plainly and simply. Perhaps it's too soon to say this. Perhaps you won't believe us, but it's the truth, and we want to protect you from every possible threat. I could see it in their eyes, desperation, sincerity, and that dark possessiveness that simultaneously frightened and drew me in. But there was something else too, genuine care, real concern for my well-being. I need time to think, I finally said. This is life-changing. Please give me space to process. Knox nodded reluctantly. One night. But Leo, your heat isn't far off. The doctor said days, we need to decide quickly. That night, I lay in my room unable to sleep, my mind churning with impossible questions. Did I truly want to marry these two powerful alphas? Could I trust them? Was this just possessiveness or genuine feeling? And most important, did I have feelings for them too? When Knox had held my hand at the hospital, when Cade said he loved me, what was that sensation in my chest? But then I thought of my grandmother. If I became vulnerable during heat, if something happened to me, what would become of her? She was still hospitalized, still dependent on me completely. And Cade was right, an unmated omega in heat, in a city full of powerful and dangerous alphas. How long would I survive? Perhaps this was simply practical. Perhaps this was about survival. But when I thought about Knox's gentle smile, about Cade's protective nature, about how they both looked at me like I was precious, maybe this was more than just survival. Maybe I was already falling for them without admitting it to myself. Maybe I'd been falling since that very first night in the kitchen, when they'd looked at me like I was their answer to everything. The next morning when I descended the stairs, both of them were already seated at the dining table, clearly waiting for me. They looked like they hadn't slept all night. Dark circles shadowed their eyes, their clothes wrinkled and disheveled, but when they saw me, hope flickered across their faces like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. I took a deep breath, steadying myself for what I was about to say. "I'll do it," I announced quietly. "I'll marry you both." Knox shot to his feet immediately, relief washing over his features so profoundly that he looked years younger. Even Cade, who typically maintained such rigid control over his emotions, let his guard drop slightly, a genuine smile curving his lips for the first time since I'd met him. "Are you absolutely certain?" Cade asked, moving closer to me with careful deliberation. "Because Leo, once we bond, it's permanent. This is a lifetime commitment we're discussing." "I know," I said, and truthfully, I did understand the gravity of what I was agreeing to. "And I want to be safe. Besides, being with you both might not be terrible." I offered a small smile, attempting to lighten the heavy atmosphere that had settled over us. Knox suddenly pulled me into an embrace, tight and warm, his arms wrapping around me like he was afraid I might vanish. "Thank you," he whispered directly into my ear, his breath warm against my skin. "We'll never give you reason to regret this. I promise you that." The following 3 days passed in a blur of activity. Using the extensive connections the Ashford twins possessed, they arranged everything with remarkable efficiency. Marriage certificates, a private ceremony, all the legal documentation properly filed and processed. The ceremony itself remained small and intimate, with only a handful of trusted witnesses present: Marcus, their head of security who'd been with them for years, and 2 senior staff members whose loyalty was unquestioned. I had no family here to attend, only my grandmother lying in her hospital bed, still too weak to make the journey. When I stood before the altar in the mansion's ornate library, dressed in a simple white shirt and black pants that Knox had personally selected for me, and saw Cade and Knox waiting in immaculate black suits that made them look even more powerful and commanding than usual, my heart began racing with a mixture of anticipation and nerves. The officiant, a distinguished older man with kind eyes, addressed me solemnly. "Leo, do you take Cade Ashford and Knox Ashford as your lawfully wedded husbands to have and to hold from this day forward in sickness and in health until death parts you?" I looked into Cade's steel-gray eyes first, then turned to meet Knox's darker gaze. "I do," I said, surprised by the certainty that resonated in my own voice. When they each responded with their own "I do," it became official, legal, binding. I was now Leo Ashford, the wedded omega of 2 powerful alpha brothers. Cade kissed me first, possessive and claiming, yet surprisingly gentle in its execution, as though I was something precious he feared breaking. When he pulled back, Knox turned me toward him, and his kiss was softer, more emotional, conveying feelings that words couldn't capture. When he finally released me, I could see unshed tears glistening in his eyes. There was no reception, no grand celebration with hundreds of guests. Just a quiet dinner, the 3 of us alone together in the formal dining room. But halfway through the meal, that familiar sensation began building inside me again. The warmth, the ache, the desperate need that I now recognized for what it was. Knox noticed instantly. His nostrils flared as he caught my changing scent, his eyes darkening with concern and something more primal. "Cade," he said in a low voice, "his heat is starting." Cade immediately picked up on it too, his gaze finding mine with both concern and a darker emotion. I was beginning to understand. "Leo, how are you feeling right now?" "Hot," I admitted, setting down my fork because my hand had started trembling. "Very hot, and I need you both. I need you desperately." Without another word, Knox stood and simply lifted me into his arms, literally sweeping me up like I weighed nothing, and headed toward the stairs. Cade followed close behind, efficiently locking doors and drawing curtains as we went. Their bedroom, now our bedroom, was enormous, dominated by a massive bed clearly designed to accommodate 3 people comfortably. Soft blankets, multiple pillows, and specialized heat lamps that would help regulate my temperature during the most intense phases. "Leo," Cade said, cupping my face in both his large hands, forcing me to focus on him through the haze beginning to cloud my thoughts. "If you feel uncomfortable at any point, if you need us to stop for any reason, just say the word. We'll stop immediately. Your consent matters more than anything else." I nodded, unable to form words because what I wanted most was their touch, not conversation. Knox laid me carefully on the bed, then settled beside me, his fingers threading gently through my hair. "We'll take care of you," he promised softly. "All night, for as long as you need us." The first wave of heat hit me then, and I gasped, reaching for them with desperate hands. Cade kissed me, the contact both distracting and comforting, while Knox placed soft kisses along my neck, particularly over the spot where the bond mark would form. "Are you ready?" Cade whispered against my lips, and when I managed to say yes, he began claiming me slowly, carefully, constantly checking to ensure I remained comfortable despite the overwhelming sensations. Then Knox took his turn, equally gentle and caring in his approach, and when the heat reached its peak, when I was practically begging for the relief only they could provide, both of them marked me, Cade on the left side of my neck, Knox on the right. Their teeth sank into my skin simultaneously, and the combination of pain and pleasure was so intense that I screamed, though it was the good kind of scream, the kind born of overwhelming sensation rather than distress. The bond snapped into place, first with Cade, then with Knox. Suddenly I could feel their emotions like echoes in my mind. Cade's fierce protectiveness, Knox's overwhelming capacity for love, both of their desperate needs to keep me safe from all harm. And they could feel me too. My lingering fear, my growing trust, and surprisingly, my developing love for them both. Throughout the entire night, they remained with me. When heat waves crashed over me, they provided relief. When exhaustion claimed me temporarily, they held me close, gave me water, placed cool cloths on my forehead. When I felt overwhelmed by the intensity of it all, they calmed me with whispered reassurances that I was safe, that I was protected, that I was loved beyond measure. By morning, when the heat finally receded, I was exhausted and sore, but strangely peaceful in ways I'd never experienced before. Lying between them with Cade's arms wrapped around my waist and Knox's face buried in my hair, I felt truly safe for the first time in my life. "Good morning, husband," Cade murmured against my ear, pulling me even closer against his solid warmth. Knox simply tightened his hold on me, making a satisfied sound almost like a purr. I could see my marks on their necks, faint but visible evidence of our completed bond. I was permanently bonded now, officially in Ashford. This was my new life. "I love you," I whispered, admitting it aloud for the first time. "Both of you." They both froze momentarily, then Knox carefully turned me so I could see his face. "Say that again," he requested, wonder filling his voice. "I love you. Both of you. I don't know exactly when it happened, but it's true." Cade kissed me deeply and thoroughly, conveying emotions through the contact. Knox kissed my hand, then my wrist, then the bond mark he'd placed on my neck. "We love you more than you could possibly comprehend," Knox said softly. "And now you're ours forever," Cade added, his voice rough with emotion. Forever. In that moment, wrapped in their arms and surrounded by their love, I thought perhaps this decision hadn't been wrong after all. Perhaps this was exactly where I was meant to be. Perhaps this was my destiny unfolding exactly as it should. The future stretched before us, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what it might bring. The next 2 weeks passed in blissful contentment. I was settling into my new life with surprising ease, cooking for Cade and Knox daily, occasionally joining their business meetings as their spouse where my input was actually valued and considered, and at night, in our shared bedroom, deepening our bonds both physical and emotional. But today, everything was about to change in ways I couldn't have anticipated. "I need to visit my grandmother," I announced at breakfast. Knox set down his coffee cup immediately, concern creasing his features. "Leo, you understand the situation remains sensitive. Your scent has fully emerged now, and a bonded omega." "I know," I interrupted gently, "but she's in the hospital recovering. She needs me. I haven't seen her in 2 weeks, please." Cade and Knox exchanged one of those meaningful looks, the silent communication that had become common between them. Finally Cade sighed in resignation. "Fine, but Marcus accompanies you, and you stay on the phone with us constantly, and you don't linger," Knox added firmly. 2 hours maximum. Then Marcus brings you straight home." I smiled, grateful for their compromise. "Thank you. I promise I'll be careful." The hospital visit went wonderfully. My grandmother looked so much better than before, color returning to her cheeks, her smile bright and genuine. When I told her about my marriage, she initially looked shocked, then concerned. "Leo, sweetheart, the Ashford twins are dangerous men. Are you truly safe with them?" "I'm safe, grandmother," I assured her, showing her the bond marks now permanently etched on my neck. "They love me deeply, and because of them you're receiving the best treatment available, the best care possible." She didn't look completely convinced, but she accepted my words. "Just be happy, my dear child. That's all I want for you." When I exited the hospital, Marcus was right beside me, alert and vigilant as always. We were heading toward the parking area when suddenly Marcus's phone rang. He answered quickly, "Yes sir, understood, I'll..." Then came a loud noise and Marcus collapsed. I realized with horror he'd been shot with a tranquilizer dart protruding from his neck. I tried to run, tried to scream for help, but suddenly someone was behind me, one hand clamping over my mouth, while another arm wrapped around my waist with bruising force. "Shuf, little Omega," an unfamiliar alpha voice whispered directly into my ear. "Don't struggle. Just come quietly with me and you won't get hurt." I fought against his grip, but he was incredibly strong, and within moments I felt something sharp prick my neck. Drugs. He was drugging me. My vision began blurring, my legs weakening beneath me. The last thing I saw was a black SUV approaching, and a man who looked vaguely familiar from somewhere I couldn't quite place. When consciousness returned, I found myself in an unfamiliar room. Expensive and lavishly decorated, but unmistakably a cage. The door was locked, windows barred with iron. A man sat in a chair before me, impeccably dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, with sharp features and cold blue eyes that studied me like a predator examining prey. "Finally awake," he said, standing with fluid grace. "I'm River Cross. You've probably heard of me." I had heard the name, River Cross, the Ashford twins' biggest rival, locked in a years-long blood feud involving territory wars, business conflicts, and multiple attempts to destroy each other completely. "What do you want from me?" I asked, trying desperately to hide my fear, though my voice betrayed me with its tremor. River moved closer, invading my personal space deliberately. "You," he stated simply, "the Ashford twins' most precious possession. They're bonded Omega. If I keep you, if I claim you as mine, they'll be completely destroyed." My heart began racing frantically. "I'm already bonded. You can't claim me." "Bonds can be broken," River said with a dark smile that sent ice through my veins. "It's painful, extremely painful, but entirely possible, and when your bonds are severed, when you're unmarked and vulnerable, I'll make you mine, and the Ashford twins, they'll lose their biggest weakness, their business will crumble, their power will dissolve into nothing." He grabbed my wrist in a painful grip that would definitely leave bruises. "Your scent," he inhaled deeply, his eyes darkening with disturbing hunger. "No wonder they're both so desperate for you. A rare Omega, beautiful, and that sweet scent. You're the perfect prize, Leo." "Let me go." I struggled futilely against his superior strength. "Cade and Knox will find me. They'll..." "What will they do?" River mocked cruelly. "This building belongs to me, heavily guarded by my men. By the time they locate you, I'll have already broken your bonds. And then," he touched my bond mark deliberately, applying enough pressure to make me wince in pain, "then you'll belong only to me." But he didn't know something crucial. Bonds aren't merely marks. Bonds are connections that transcend physical distance. I could feel them even now. Cade's fury burning like wildfire, Knox's panic threatening to overwhelm him, both of their desperate needs to find me. They were coming. I knew it with absolute certainty. I just needed to buy time. "River," I said, trying to sound calm despite my terror. "If you hurt me, they'll never forgive you. They'll..." "Exactly," River interrupted with satisfaction. "I want them to hurt. I want them to suffer the way I suffered when they killed my brother. This is revenge, Leo, and unfortunately you're caught in the middle." He gripped my chin, forcing me to meet his cold gaze. "But I'm not entirely cruel. If you cooperate, if you bond with me willingly, I'll treat you like royalty, give you anything you desire. Except freedom," I said bitterly. "Except choice. Except what I actually want, my husband's." River's expression darkened ominously. "They won't be your husbands much longer. When I'm finished with you, when they see you with someone else." Suddenly explosions rocked the building. Gunshots echoed through the halls. Shouting voices. River's phone rang immediately. "Sir, the Ashford twins are here. They brought a full army. They're breaking through our defenses." The connection cut off abruptly. River looked at me with frustration. "You think they'll save you? I'm taking you out of here. By the time they reach this room, it'll be too late." He forcefully pulled me toward the door. But then the door exploded inward. When the smoke cleared, Cade stood there with a gun in hand, blood splattered across his expensive suit, and his eyes held such murderous intent that it was genuinely terrifying. "Let him go." Each word was a deadly threat. Behind me, Knox entered through the window, equally armed and dangerous looking. River used me as a human shield, pressing a knife against my throat. "One more step, and I'll slit his throat right here, but he'd miscalculated badly. He didn't know that Cade and Nox operated as a perfect team, completely synchronized. In one fluid second, Cade fired, perfect aim striking River's hand. The knife clattered to the floor. Nox grabbed me, pulling me to safety, and Cade began beating River with brutal, merciless efficiency. "Cade, stop," I shouted desperately. "You'll kill him." "Good," Cade growled, landing another vicious punch. But Nox finally intervened physically. "Cade, Leo is safe now. Stop. Let the police handle this." Reluctantly, Cade stepped back, though he continued staring at River like he wanted to attack again. Nox turned me around, checking my face for injuries, scanning my body for any harm done. "Did he hurt you?" "If he did anything, I'm fine," I said quickly. "He talked about breaking the bonds, but you arrived before he could do anything." Cade took me from Nox and held me so tightly I could barely breathe, his face buried in my hair. "I almost lost you," he said hoarsely. "When Marcus called when he said you were gone, I nearly lost my mind completely." "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I should have been more careful." "No," Nox said firmly. "This wasn't your fault, it was River's. And now he'll rot in prison, or face something worse." That night when we returned home, they literally didn't release me. During my bath, they were there. At dinner, one on each side. In bed, they surrounded me completely. "We're not putting you in a vulnerable position again," Cade declared. "Until every threat is eliminated, you're not leaving this mansion." "Cade," I tried to protest. "No arguments," he said firmly. "Leo, I almost lost you today. I can't take that risk again." Nox took my hand, desperation clear in his eyes. "Please, Leo, for us, just give us time to secure everything properly." I looked into their eyes, seeing genuine fear, genuine love. They'd thought they would lose me, and honestly I'd been terrified too. "Okay," I finally agreed, "but not permanently, just until it's actually safe." "Promise," they both said simultaneously. But the way they held me that night, possessive, protective, almost desperately, made me wonder if their definition of safe might differ significantly from mine. And that thought began to concern me deeply. Because where was the line between love and possession? And were we crossing it? 3 months. 3 complete months had passed since River's attack. 3 months during which I hadn't left this mansion even once. Initially, I understood their caution. I was scared, traumatized, craving the safety these walls provided. But now I was suffocating under the weight of their protection. Every day followed the exact same pattern. I woke up, shared breakfast with Cade and Nox, watched them leave for their offices while I remained home, spent the day cooking or reading to pass endless hours, waited for their return, ate dinner together, then went to bed. Repeat, no variation, no freedom, no life existing beyond these increasingly oppressive walls. "I need to go outside," I finally said this morning, frustration bleeding into my voice. "Just for a walk, in the garden, some fresh air." Cade set down his newspaper with deliberate slowness. "The garden isn't completely secure. A sniper could." "A sniper?" I said incredulously. "Cade, River is in prison. All his associates are either captured or dead. Who exactly would target me?" "New threats emerge constantly in our business," Cade said calmly but firmly. "Enemies never truly disappear." "So what?" I challenged him directly. "I should stay trapped here my entire life?" "This is a prison, Cade. Don't you understand that?" Nox, who'd been quietly eating breakfast, finally spoke up. "Leo, we're concerned about your safety." "Safety?" I laughed bitterly. "Or control? You want to control me? You decide everything. What I wear, when I sleep, who I can speak with. I'm not your property. How can you possibly think that?" Nox said, genuine hurt crossing his features. "We love you. Love doesn't suffocate." I stood abruptly, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Love trusts. Love provides freedom. But you two, you're keeping me in a gilded cage and expecting me to be grateful." Cade stood as well, his jaw tightening. "We're protecting you." "No," I moved directly in front of him, refusing to back down. "You're protecting your own insecurities. You're so terrified of losing me that you've stopped letting me actually live. This isn't a relationship, Cade. This is ownership." Silence fell, complete and heavy. I stood there breathing hard, emotions overwhelming my usual restraint. Then I said what I'd been thinking for weeks now. "I want you to let me go." "What?" Nox's voice was barely a whisper, as though he couldn't believe what he'd heard. "Let me go," I repeated, even though saying these words physically hurt somewhere deep in my chest. "If this is real love, if this is genuine, then give me a choice. Give me freedom. Let me prove that I want to stay with you by my own choice, not because I'm forced. Cade's reaction was immediate and predictable. No, absolutely not. You're not leaving. Why? I challenged. Because you don't trust me? Or because you know if you give me actual freedom, your controlling nature will be exposed for what it really is? Because I can't lose you, Cade finally shouted, showing vulnerability for the first time since I'd known him. Because you're everything. Because if you leave, I don't know what I'll do. Actual tears welled in his eyes. I'd never seen Cade cry before. Knox was crying too, silent tears streaming down his face as he buried it in his hands. Please, Leo, he said in a broken voice. Don't go. We'll do better, whatever you need, but please don't leave us. I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself. I don't want to leave permanently, but I need space. Time to think, to understand if this relationship is actually healthy, or just trauma bonding. If we let you go, Knox said slowly, tears still falling, is there any chance you'll come back to us? It was an honest question, painful but honest. I don't know, I admitted truthfully, because you never gave me the chance to let my feelings develop naturally. You took me, claimed me, trapped me. I never got to discover if I love you by choice or just because of circumstances. Cade slammed his fist on the table, making the glasses shake violently. This is impossible. How can I let you go when I know you might never return? Because, I said softly, if you don't let me go, I definitely won't come back. Not mentally, not emotionally. I'm already distancing myself. Don't you feel it through the bond? I'm detaching from you both. It was true. Over the past few weeks, I'd deliberately started suppressing my emotions, dulling the bond connection, a survival mechanism, and they'd felt it. I knew from their increasing panic, their heightened possessiveness. Knox looked at Cade, that silent communication passing between them. Then Knox, surprising everyone including Cade, said, "Okay, Knox," Cade said warningly. "No, Cade," Knox said firmly, looking at me. "Leo is right. We did this wrong. We were so scared that we turned love into control. And if we truly love him, we have to let him go. What if he doesn't come back?" Cade's voice cracked with emotion. "Then," Knox said, tears continuing to flow, "at least we'll know we did the right thing, that we gave him choice." Cade turned to me, his eyes holding so many emotions. Fear, hurt, love, desperation. "If I let you go," he said slowly, struggling with every single word, "if I give you complete freedom, no restrictions, no guards, will you genuinely think about us, about this relationship?" "Yes," I promised sincerely. "I'll think about it, honestly and fairly." He nodded, defeated. "All right then." Then he placed an envelope before me on the table. "Your passport, bank account details, substantial money, yours, only yours. Your grandmother's account is here too. All her medical expenses covered for the next 10 years, regardless of what happens." I stared at the envelope, my hands trembling. This was real. They were actually letting me go. "And the bond marks?" I asked quietly. "They remain," Knox said. "We'll stay physically bonded unless you want medical unbonding. But emotionally, mentally, you're completely free." That night, when I packed just some clothes, a few personal items, they both helped me, silently with tears. When I prepared to leave, Cade pulled me into one last desperate embrace. "I love you so much," he whispered. "Whether you come back or not, that will always be true." Knox held me too, his body shaking. "Wherever you go, whatever you do, just be happy. That's all I need, your happiness." I released them, physically painful, and walked out. Marcus drove me to the airport. I deliberately didn't tell them my destination, and when I finally sat on the plane, alone at last, I cried. Freely, openly. Over the next 2 weeks, I spent time in a small beach town, thinking, reflecting, realizing how much I missed Cade and Knox, their touch, their scent, their presence. But simultaneously, I enjoyed the freedom, discovered myself, who I was without them, what I actually wanted, and slowly I realized I loved them, genuinely, not because of circumstances, not because of the bond, but because of who they were, flawed, possessive, but deeply loving. They'd made mistakes, yes, but they'd also let me go when I needed it. They'd trusted me. By the 3rd week, I stood outside the mansion gates, nervous, scared, but certain. When I rang the doorbell, Knox answered. His eyes were red like he'd been crying recently. When he saw me, he froze completely. "I came back," I said softly. "If you still want me." Knox crushed me against him, crying openly. "Always, will always want you." Cade appeared too, his expression transforming from shock to overwhelming relief. Leo, I'm coming back, I said clearly. But there are conditions: no more prison, no more controlling behavior, trust, communication, equal partnership. If we want this relationship to work, we do it properly. Understood? Anything, Cade said desperately, joining the embrace. Whatever you need, just please stay. I'll stay, I said smiling. Because I love you both, and I want to make this work. That night, lying in bed together, the three of us as it should be, everything felt different, better, healthier. Thank you, Knox whispered, for leaving, for coming back, for giving us another chance. Thank you, I said, for letting me go, for giving me choice. Cade kissed me, soft and gentle. We'll be better, I promise. No more cages, no more control, just love, and trust. And freedom, I added. Yes, they both agreed. And freedom. Because finally we'd learned, love isn't possession. Love is choice, trust, freedom, and when you truly love someone, you don't hold them so tightly they break. You let them go and trust they'll return. And I had returned, by my own choice, through my own love, and that was everything.